Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am CJ DuBe, expert EOS implementer, and I am joined with Kelly Knight, integrator for EOS Worldwide, and Mark O'Donnell, our visionary for EOS Worldwide, and the three of us have written the People Book. We've been asked a lot of questions, so we're going to dive right in and start answering those questions for you. Mark, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I love these cards.
Don't you?
Yeah. So the first question is, explain the culture checkup and how leading without intentionality can result in less than desirable team cultures. So that's the first question.
Oh, that's perfect for you, Mark.
It is, yeah. Well, I'm sure any of us can answer that. So when we were going through the People Book and we were reflecting on the clients that we work with, we identified that there's really 4 culture types. And there are organizations that have a high level of intentionality, but they aren't very healthy. They're very commanding control. They treat people like replaceable parts, where people are expendable. High turnover is sort of the result of that. And then those with low intentionality, they could be healthy, but they really have just sort of a chaotic culture. They have pockets of really high health, but they don't have any hiring processes. They can't do it on purpose over and over again. And then you have the other side where it's healthy and lacks intentionality, and you end up with a happy accident. And the things that hold the culture back, hold the business back, is they're afraid to hire someone new because they might upset the great culture that they accidentally found themselves in.
And I have to say, a lot of the companies that I work with on a regular basis, a couple of them recently said, I was a happy accident for the first 5 years.
Yeah.
They're lucky because a lot of them don't make it past 5 years.
They don't. They end up hiring people and then they move into that chaotic culture, and it's sort of the same thing.
Exactly.
They still have those little pockets of good, but they just can't break through.
So the trick is to be able to get to an intentional culture. That's where we want to go, is we have high intentionality and are very healthy. But that takes a lot of courage for teams to really work towards that intentional culture where everything's healthy, processes are followed, they have the right people in the right seats. That's what we want with an intentional culture.
Yeah.
That's right.
Kelly, go for it. Ask another question. See what else someone else wants to know.
Well, I really love this question, and this one is near and dear to my heart as it is yours. It is, how do you define greater good, and why is it important to build an intentional culture?
That is perfect for you.
Oh, I obsess about it anyway. So what we write about in the book is that greater good equals every single word of the VTO multiplied by genuine care and concern. And that's because at EOS, that is our guiding light. That's our North Star, is that VTO. And to obsess about not just some parts of it, or sometimes we adhere to it, but every single word, every single day, so much so that I keep it to the left of me when I'm at my desk working, and I use it as a filtering mechanism for everything that we do. But then you take the VTO and you multiply it by this just pure, genuine love, this genuine care and concern for people, and that multiplied together is what creates the greater good. And there is no way to have an intentional culture without it.
No, and having an intentional culture, though, combined with wanting to have that greater good, that doesn't mean that everything is rosy and nice all the time. Sometimes that is about having tough conversations, because when you look at the VTO and you look at every word and you want to get there and be there, sometimes that means having a tough conversation once in a while.
For sure. And we talk about in the book the difference between serving and pleasing. And when you want to please someone, you're just going to say whatever it is that you think they want to hear. But sometimes greater good and genuine care and concern requires those hard conversations, as you said. That's serving them versus pleasing them. I would also add that when greater good is not we didn't add that to the EOS process. It was in the process prior when we talk about the 5 leadership practices and acting with the greater good in mind. And in my experience working with clients is that they will automatically say, yes, I act with the greater good in mind. All my actions, they just automatically say yes. And I think the reality is it should almost always be a no, at least on the outset.
I don't think, though, in 14 years of working with leadership teams, I've ever had someone say no.
Yeah, because it's
They all are
embarrassing.
clouded. Well, they're all clouded with their vision of what the greater good really is.
Right.
Right.
And when we dig deep, then they figure out what the greater good is and realize.
Well, and I think that there's a real misconception that you can only serve individuals or the whole of the company at any one given time. And I've never found that to be true. You can serve individuals and
Yes.
the whole of the organization at the same time. It just takes a lot of hard work and grit to figure out if someone isn't right for the seat, if they don't have the GWC, and candidly, they're miserable and they're not fulfilling the needs of the seat. You're doing them a favor by letting them go pursue something they're really great at. And the organization deserves to have the best people in those seats. So done well, though, with that genuine care and concern, you can make those really tough calls and tough conversations
For sure.
really happen quite smoothly, more than what most people believe can be true.
And most people actually, when they do go to another company, are grateful. They realize that it wasn't quite the right fit for them anyways. And they're actually grateful. I've had many people over the years come back to me and say, actually, CJ, that was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to add one other thing to that question too, though. When we say every word of the VTO, I think that's just as important as the greater good, because we see, if you want a vision shared by all, every single word matters, and the interpretation of the way you wrote the words, the punctuation, every little bit of that VTO matters, because any deviation from a pure understanding of every word of the VTO just creates this separation throughout the organization. The ability for you to get vision shared by all just gets diminished, and the probability goes down when you don't have that really just total attention to every single word, the vocabulary choice, every piece of that matters. Otherwise, you're just hurting your culture.
And that's a key emphasis that I have been really emphasizing with the clients that I've been working with a lot lately, because so many times I swear I get quarterly to quarterly and they go, yeah, we haven't looked at it all quarter, right?
Or it's close enough.
Exactly, but it's not. Every word matters.
Well, and remember, you're cascading all of these to the entire team, top to bottom. So doing state of the company, it's really honoring that VTO by going slow to go fast. So as you're walking out those 8 sections, it's really explaining the context of why each of those really matter, and sometimes how they were chosen or why changes are made, because the why really, really matters.
One of the favorite things I have that we've kind of coined and we started saying when we were doing the book was, people are watching. Whether that's 12 employees are watching, 100 employees are watching, or 400 employees, people are watching, because they are. They are watching the leadership team. And if the leadership team stays true to that VTO and genuine care and concern, it's good.
Well, the really cool thing is when you do get intentional culture and then you actually have team members call you out. Like, was that decision really honoring our core focus or our core values? I'm like, that's so great. Yes, challenge it, because we don't always get it right as teams. So it's cool.
All right, there's another question here. How have you seen leaders adjust to having multiple generations in their company? So I'm lucky enough to have many family-held businesses. I have a company that has like 6 businesses, and they literally have 2nd generation, 3rd generation, and 4th generation. And I would say this, that the 2nd generation had a tendency to operate as control and command, right? That was just their natural way of running a business and growing it. 3rd generation comes in and is like, no, we're not going to run it that way. We want a more consensus. And now their 4th generation is coming in, and they're a little braver, they're a little more courageous, they're a little more, let's try this, let's try that. So it's just being aware. A leadership needs to be aware of the cultures they have, the people they have in their organization, because they can all work together and they all bring something different, I think, to the business generationally. It's fun.
right.
I have a few teams that are 30-somethings. That's my joke to them, because they are all not barely 30, but they're fun to work with because they're energetic, they're excited, they're ready to go, and it's fun. It's really fun.
Now, have you had in the family businesses, those multiple generations, where they're inheriting this company, they've grown up in the company, and it's just not part of their their personal core focus. It's just not part of who they are. And how does that end up playing out?
Well, that has played out quite a bit in a couple of the companies that I've worked with, that their personal core focus of how they personally like to run a business. What I found is there's change in the leadership team. Really, there's people that no longer there. They need to turn people over because they're just not the same. And to get how to get here is not going to get you there, that kind of line of thinking, you really have to make sure that you got those right people. It usually happens though. It just feels slower, I think, at the beginning.
Yeah.
To make that change.
And I've also seen where, because at the underlying component of what we're talking about here and genuine care and concern is that every single individual is a unique person. They have their own unique gifts, and our job is to sort of find their right fit, as we were talking about earlier with, it's a good thing if they find a new place.
Right.
But I think with family businesses, sometimes there's a sense of obligation where they're not a fit. They were not put on this earth to run in that family business, and it's time to go, and that's okay.
It is okay, and it's hard to teach, but it takes a bit, but they get it. But personal core focus, which is something absolutely that we're teaching in the People book, is it ties to a company's core focus, right? So core focus, what's the purpose, cause, and passion, and then the niche of what you do. Personal core focus, really to simplify it for right now, is simply to say something that you love to do, plus what are you best at, greatest at in the world, right? And you tie those two things too, plus the accountability chart, that equals right seats.
Right. And then is it aligned with the organization?
Exactly.
Is it going where it needs to go? Yep.
Exactly.
And when that matches, it's just perfect.
Magic.
Yeah.
Super fun is what it is.
Yes, it is.
All right, Mark, you have another question there?
A whole stack full.
Okay, good.
All right, talk about the people component and why it's so important in the face of the new workplace. There's a new workplace?
I don't know.
Well, I think, every generation, you read all throughout history, people think that they're in the new workplace. And certainly that is true because it's new for now. But it's not necessarily new or different.
Right.
But I think what people are probably talking about when they ask this, we hear about, there's not enough, there's low unemployment, right? You can't find enough people.
Right.
I've interviewed so many implementers, and I always ask them, hey, what are the top 3 things that are on your client's issues list? And number 1, without a doubt, is I can't find enough people.
Over and over.
Over and over again. And that is something that is somewhat new to at least the last few centuries. And
I've been in the placement industry for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's well, the level to the degree that there's not enough people to fill the open roles.
Right.
And the reality is you're not going to be able to fix that. It's somewhat controversial to say this, but the birth rate has been so low for so long that there's just quite simply not enough humans to fill the open jobs. You have a demographic that's turned upside down.
Right.
And so the result of that is there's more demand on the economy than there are people to actually fulfill those demands. And so the only thing that a company can do, and what we encourage people to do, if you want a line of people waiting outside your business, is to build that intentional culture.
100%.
You can only tip the scales in your favor. Right. You can't, create new humans, at least, it might take a little while for them to enter the workforce. Takes a bit.
And think about attracting talent that can come from your internal team. So if their experience is great and they're living a great life, what we call the EOS life, that automatically becomes an attraction tool, and you don't get to the EOS life without intentional culture.
Yeah.
And they're wanting to grow within that business, and they want to be able to tell their friends, and then their friends come and want to work there, and that's what it is. That's just networking your way to finding great people. I've had a couple companies that have created their own training centers.
Yep.
I have an interesting story of one of my companies that has like 400 plumbers. But still needed plumbers. They recruited out of the high schools, and they started their own university, and they would bring in those that chose not to go on to college, and they put them into a plumbing university and taught them how to be plumbers.
Perfect.
So they were
Yeah.
truly filling their own pipeline of great talent right there.
Yeah.
So
that
it
great?
takes creativity these days.
Well, it does too. And think about, there's the virtual environment, there's the in-office, and then there's hybrid. So
Right.
it makes it that much more important that you have great command over the people component, because
Right.
let's face it, it's just more complex.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's great.
All right, Kelly,
Kelly,
what do you
you're
got
up,
for a question?
Okay, this is a close second for me. All right, what does heart-centered leadership mean to you? How do you live that in your role as integrator at EOS Worldwide? So heart-centered leadership starts with that really love is a verb. And we write in the book about how it can be very uncomfortable sometimes in the professional setting to talk about love, and it feels ooey gooey and sort of like squishy, like how do you define that in the workplace? But it's not romantic love. It really means that our words, actions, and behaviors are emulating what we want to see true in the workplace, that genuine care and concern. So what does that look like? Examples include things like making sure that you're taking time to go slow and meet with your team when things aren't going so well, that you're putting that love into making sure that we're getting peaceful resolution. It might mean getting resources that a team member might need to delegate and elevate, and be able to do more in their own seat. So it can be very practical. Heart-centered leadership is actually, you think of it as being something that is not that way, but it really is. It turns out very practical.
It's not fluffy at all. It actually is caring about people and loving people. And there's a big difference between, you think about abundance and love up here, and you've got scarcity and fear here. There is a big pendulum swing between those two. Reality is, most businesses, and even as humans, we operate under scarcity and fear.
Yes.
Biologically hardwired
Yes.
for it.
Exactly. I mean, it's just fact. We
Yes,
are.
right.
And so trying to be able to help everyone to get more to abundance and love, and know that it's not this fluffy thing. It will change your business. It will help your business and help all the people in the business.
Right, and it has to be authentic. You
Yes.
know, we write in the book about one of us, name who should go unmentioned, that we knew who was a CEO. He meant well, he had good intentions, but he would make the rounds of an office. And it was almost like he was checking the box, that he thought that making those rotations was what it meant to be relational. But it ended up being disruptive to the team, as it turns out. He didn't realize that.
Right.
But it came off as inauthentic. So that authenticity is really important. It needs to be just sort of who you are, and you have to do it in a way that works for you. So every person is going to exhibit great management and leadership in their own way. But heart-centered leadership can't be manufactured. You can't just read from a book and then it's not a prescription. You have to figure out what is your way of being a really great heart-centered, authentic leader.
And all you leaders out there just need to know that all of your employees, all your people, they want time with you. They want to have an opportunity to feel your love. They really do. So the more they do it, the better it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and also when you think about abundance and love with heart-centered leadership and scarcity and fear, what your example, that was an example of scarcity and fear, whereas abundance and love, as you said, we're all hardwired for scarcity. With abundance, it's the acknowledgement that every person on your team has a creativity that is unmatched by anyone who has ever lived and ever will. And loving them is allowing them to unlock that creativity, because that's what creates all abundance in the world, is human ingenuity. It's not a denial that there are indeed scarce resources. It's just the fact that human ingenuity overcomes those scarce resources each and every time. And our job as leaders is to unlock that creativity, let them flourish.
That's right. And I might add that for people who join your team who have come from other environments that do not think this way and do not embrace this, you will be accused of being inauthentic or cheesy or whatever, fill in the adjective of your choice. Don't lose heart. Just stick with it, and you will have people come around. So that's also part of that dare to build an intentional culture, is having courage, because not everybody's going to believe you at first.
No.
They're not going to think it's real.
Yeah. I'm not sure at some point we're going to talk about courage and why it's the subtitle of the book.
Go for it, Mark.
Let's do it.
Go for it. Talk about dare, build.
Yeah, I mean, well, why did we say dare to build an intentional culture? Well, it really comes from the fact that so often we're working with leadership teams, and we see what's going on with the team, and you know someone isn't a fit. You know they don't GWC, they don't want to have the capacity to do their job really well. They might not share the core values. And it's scary for a leader to say, it's time to go. And so you don't want to cause them harm. It's kind of weak and wimpy leadership.
Right.
And it's probably the number one thing that we see preventing a company from getting 80% strong in the people component is they simply lack the courage to make that one great people move per quarter.
100%.
They just don't want to do it.
No.
And so
they come up with every reason,
that's right.
every reason why not to.
Yeah.
They circle the wagon over and over and over.
We got to hire a replacement first, or
right. It's just over.
And the can does get kicked.
Yep.
And then what happens is you're only deferring the inevitable, which is the person's got to go.
Yes.
Well, and then they find themselves in situations, we've all been there.
Yeah.
That person's been there 10 years, 20 years. And now it's gotten so toxic that they ultimately are up against the wall and have no choice. They have to find some courage
Well,
Yeah.
because there's too many people around them telling them.
What's unfortunate is for that whole time that you've waited to not make the tough call, everybody's watching, going back to your comment.
everybody's watching and everyone's suffering.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
person's suffering, you're suffering, the people that work
That's
around
right.
with them are suffering.
That's right.
It just doesn't work.
And so when it finally happens, the people on the team who've been watching have said, well, finally, we knew that had to happen.
Well,
So
and the courage part is you do it. You finally do it. You have that conversation. That person leaves. And then all of a sudden, the whole leadership team looks at each other and says, why did it take us so long?
Yeah.
You know how many times I've heard that?
Yeah,
It's
every
like
time.
every time.
Every time.
Why did it take us so long? It's be brave, be courageous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dare to build.
Dare to build. Love it. Thanks for bringing
Yeah.
that up, Mark. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
CJ,
Yes.
what's one of the most courageous things that one of your team members has had to do as an EOS implementer?
As an EOS implementer, for me,
Or for a team that's worked with you?
a team that's worked with me. So I have a team that I've worked with for close to 10 years. And I would tell you in about year 2 or 3, it was pretty clear there was a partner that wasn't a fit. Fast forward to this year of being 10 years, they made that change.
Wow.
So the longevity of that and the facilitation, I have facilitated team health and annuals for all those years over and over and over. And it's happened to me more than once in more than one team, right? It just takes, and it's hard when there's ownership involved. So we talk about partnership rules of the game, but it takes some teams a very, very long time. And that challenge, and here's the thing as an implementer, I'm bold, I'm candid, but no implementer can make any company make the changes they need to make.
Yeah.
You've got to let them do it on their own, in their own time. Even though in your own brain you're going, oh, for heaven's sake, get this done.
You just can't
please."
take people where they don't want to go.
Right. So it's like you have to keep guiding and
Right.
leading and saying and meet them where they're at. Right? You got to meet them where they're at. But it happened. And yes, now they're like feeling quite relieved. All of them. Quite
Yeah.
honestly, every one of the partners, even the partner that's left.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
you probably knew, using EOS and the process and the
yes.
tools, that it was eventually going to happen. It was just a readiness.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
It's
It was
crazy.
about courage.
But
Yeah.
it's people, it's human, it's emotions, right? And
Yeah.
not everybody's ready for
We
everything at
don't
the same
always
time.
do what we know we should.
That's
true.
so true.
Yes.
So true.
All right, who's up? Who's
All right, I
questions
got
next?
one.
You got one?
That's probably ties right back to what we were talking about, though.
Yeah.
What does it mean to build an intentional culture? Do I have an example of a company that turned their culture around? So yes, there's a company that I've worked with. Actually, 2 of the leaders on this leadership team, I worked with them on a previous company. And then probably 6, 7 years ago, I've been with them for 4 years, 5 years again. They decided to go off and start their own business. Well, they brought in all their buddies and they brought in their friends and their sisters involved and brothers involved. I think Cousin Fred's there too. And so all of a sudden it's cruising and I'm teaching EOS and I'm teaching EOS and they are 80% growth one year, literally. They are just hiring like crazy, filling it up, filling it up. Fast forward one more year, it is the most chaotic culture I had heard in a long time. Because they didn't take their time to hire the right people, as much as I had taught them, right?
Yeah.
They did not take the time to hire the right people. And what they ended up needing to do was because it affected business. It affected sales, it affected delivery, they lost a big client, it affected them. They ended up having to lay off 15 people.
Wow.
And that truly did not feel good either. But it took that to finally understand we need to hire slower, be more purposeful with our values, make sure people are GW seeing their seat, and actually we don't need this many people. We can be more selective on the people that we're hiring and putting into the seats. So, you know, that's an example of being happy accident, going to chaotic culture, and now still working really diligently, but very purposefully into intentional culture.
And it takes a lot of effort to stay in an intentional culture.
Yes.
I mean, you can get there, but you have to, I mean, growth, scale, when you got a big new client coming on, you have a new project, all of a sudden you have this demand, you're very, very tempted to say like, pulse, check, hired. Like, you're breathing, great, you're in. So tempting, but you can't do that.
And I liken it to like watching the landscape all the time. You got to always be looking out ahead to see what's changing. Is the weather changing? Is there a herd coming over the over the horizon? Yeah, you really have to watch it all the time. You're right. It's not a one and done.
Nope. It is every day, all day, really.
That's the hard part about being a leader. You have to have vision in the future, watching it.
Right. So entrepreneurs here, you know, love it. Make sure that your integrators really love that.
Yes.
Because as your company grows, you need someone who really takes pride in that too.
All right, so this question is, how have trends like quiet quitting and quiet firing, I haven't really heard that one, impacted the team culture? Well, I think about with these terms in general, this is nothing new. This is just some person wrote a great headline and social media amplified it all over the universe, and here we are. In other words, there is nothing new under the sun. People have been quiet quitting. You know, my last name is O'Donnell. People do the Irish goodbye. Like, they just disappear. Like, where'd they go? You know, I mean, this is absolutely nothing new. But I will say, though, that since the pandemic and people going from in-person, playing hide and seek in person to disappearing remotely. This is something that has occurred since the beginning of time. I think we've drawn attention to it because of remote work. And there's a lot of people who are new managers, they're inexperienced managers. And if you got a team of 10 people, say, too many people reporting to you, and they're all remote, you haven't met all of them, and you don't really know what you're doing as a great leader and great manager, it is certainly possible to forget that they exist and not call them. And then the other person to be like, I'm just going to go get another job, get paid by them, or I'm just going to disappear.
Well, I
nobody
think
cares.
A lot of it goes back to the leadership team, though, too, right?
Totally.
Because if they're allowing quiet quitting or quiet firing, they're not being good leaders.
Yeah.
They're not engaging with the people and helping them to determine should they leave, should they stay. And again, with everything being on Zoom for so long, it was like, oh, people don't notice when you're not there.
Right.
It's like, oh, I didn't see that little square up there today. Okay.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Well, and quiet firing just reminds me of Office Space with putting Milton in the basement with his red stapler. Like, you're not getting a paycheck. You're in the basement. You get a hint. No, I mean, it's all the things that we've talked about with, you know, being a heart-centered leader. If you genuinely care about your people, you're not going to quietly fire them. You're not going to put them in the basement and steal their stapler.
It does lead to another question that I have, though. And the question that I have is, what can a leader do to quit being held hostage by a high-performing wrong person? So everyone, right person, values, right seat, GWC. So what they're saying here is they're asking someone who's very good at their job, but they do not fit the core values. So they have it in their head that I cannot fire this person because they are the best developer we have, or they are the
Top
best salesperson that we have. What are we going to do with our revenue if I fire my top salesperson? And yet this person is so toxic, it is affecting everyone around them, including the whole business, and at some point it will implode. So what I encourage every leader to do is when they look at their values and they have an experience with this person, right away within 24 hours, you need to go talk to that person. And you need to say, when you did this, this is your data point. When you did this, it didn't match this value. You're not showing up who we are. And when you really get to the point that they're doing it so often, you need to have those data points. So I definitely believe you have to be able to have the examples of what they're doing when they're doing it that don't match the values. It actually is giving you as a leader the ammunition. Now, back to the word courage. You got to be brave enough to do it. Because if you're going to be a wimp, sorry, you're going to be stuck with that person for years, and you'll be 10 years down the line and you won't be happy. So just really think about it when you see these actions happen, how it ties to each value, and you'll be able to use it as an example. Every once in a while, that person can flip. It's rare, but they can flip and start following the values.
That's right. Well, and there's a trick called name the fear, which Gino taught me a long time ago. And so that really helps. So if you name the fear, so as the manager, being worried about letting go of someone like this, is just say, look, I'm afraid that our sales aren't going to be where they need to be. It's okay. It's just an issue. But it doesn't mean we don't have those tough conversations. And sometimes they do turn around. And then when they don't, you've done everything that you possibly can by having those conversations. And the irony is, all the fear that we have around something that is actually going to implode never does.
It never happens. It never happens.
You make the tough call and suddenly you have someone new that's attracted and comes into the organization and ends up working out.
Right.
I think you have to be careful too, because they can trick you.
They can.
They can clean it up for a quarter or two, and you think, oh, this is amazing. It's starting to work now. And then all of a sudden, it all goes back down.
Anyone can do anything for short periods of time.
Right.
And who wants to have an employee that's putting you on this roller coaster all the time? That's just craziness. Craziness.
Yeah, and don't deny your intuition. If you know in your heart of hearts that it's just not right,
gotta use your gut.
You gotta pull the cord.
Yeah.
All right. So this question: how can leaders balance delegating and stretch goals with GWC? So this one is really referring to what we called the GWC flow channel. And so this comes from Mihai Csikszentmihalyi and some research into flow states where people are achieving 500% increase in productivity, and it's just, you're in the zone. And it's finding the perfect balance between the challenge and the skill that you currently possess. And so what we did is we took GWC, get it, want capacity to do it, and said there's a GWC over time. And as you add challenges to a person, and as they gain skills, certain things happen. And so as a leader, as a manager, you should be very careful and intentional about what you're delegating to individuals. Because if it's too far outside of their current skill, and the challenge is too great, you're going to put them in a place of anxiety and stress. And maybe they are a total core values fit, but all of a sudden they start feeling like they're not. They start acting out in some way because they're not able to meet the challenge. And on the flip side of that, if you don't give enough challenge to them and they keep gaining skill, but the challenge remains the same, they're going to slip into boredom. They're going to be bored as all get out, and they're going to act the same. And the person in high anxiety and stress pretty much acts the same as they do when they're bored. They're not going to feel like core values fit. They're not going to do the job. They're going to procrastinate a little bit more than
Put their head
usual.
in the sand.
Right. It's like, that's so easy. I could do it in my sleep, and then they go to sleep.
Well, that's the art and the science of being a great manager. is acknowledging that if you've got 4 or 5 people, they may have a very different set of capabilities in terms of skill against challenge.
Yeah.
And so you cannot treat this cookie cutter as though your whole team, everyone is the same way. So the art is really understanding your team well enough to know is what does each member, and what are they capable of taking on as a challenge. And sometimes you experiment and you realize, oh, I probably went a little too far with the delegation on that.
Right.
I need to pull back. So it's really like watching and learning.
It's kind of like we talked about, like if you think about, we utilize Kolbe assessment a lot, right? So if you think about a fact finder follow through, we've talked about their amount of stress of skill improvement's about 4%.
Yep.
Right? Now they may get here and then go another 4%, but mostly it's 4%. That's their stress level. Otherwise, they start to get really flustered, upset. They don't feel good about what they're doing. Now, the other side of that is someone that's not being challenged also feels stressed, like a quick start. Someone who is an insisting quick start, you can push them to about 40%. Myself? Sure, you can push me. I'm a quick start. I will figure it out. I'll keep trying. I'll figure it out. I'll learn. I'll grow. But even I can hit a point where I'm hitting a ceiling.
Yep.
So it's just being aware of your people and where they land and how they like to work too. And so paying attention on how they like to work, knowing their Kolbe absolutely helps a lot as well.
Yeah, because the flip side of that, while our hypothesis is that a high quick start can take on a much higher degree of challenge, they also get bored very, very fast. So it's the inverse of that, where they're in boredom, and the opposite for most likely a resistant quick start would be they can stay in that GWC flow channel for a lot
for a long
without
time.
getting bored. Yeah. So it is all about the balance and really being intentional, which means you can't manage each and every one of your people exactly the same. You have to accept that they are a unique individual.
Yes.
Only one like them, only one that will ever will be. And if you don't do that, it's going to be a little bit of an interesting road for you.
Yeah, and sometimes even in that GWC channel, there's a range, right? So sometimes people can bounce in there, like even successfully be in range, but it's not a straight line, right?
Definitely not a straight line.
No.
All right, Kelly, I think you're up.
Oh, is work-life balance a myth?
Sometimes.
Oh, Kelly, that one's so perfect for you.
Yes.
Maybe we should all do a quick rapid-fire answer.
You should.
I do think it's a myth. I don't think there's such a thing as balance, because there's always going to be some give and take in life. That's just natural. And I don't believe you put your personal life in a box and tie it with twine and put it on a shelf when you go to work, or vice versa. It's sort of all like ebbs and flows. It's fluid. So my personal belief is, while I don't think that there's really a balance per se, it's really just finding like harmony. How are you going to do that in your life? And figuring out what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
I have had so many, I mean, literally peers, people I work with, people I've trained, family, say, well, I didn't want to bother you because I know how busy you are. I hate the word busy.
People say it to me all the time.
I'm like, I don't want to call you because you're so busy. I'm like, I am never too busy for a person. I will figure it out, because I love my life. I love what I do. I fill it to the brim because that's who I am. I just do that. If I wasn't doing this, I'd go find something else to fill to the brim. So balance for me is pockets of time when I'm with my family, I'm with my family. I just give them everything I've got. I give them all my attention. When I'm with all of you lovelies, I give you all my attention. And when I'm with my clients, I do the same thing.
There's a way to measure it. We have the EOS life. So doing what you love with people you love, making a huge difference, being compensated appropriately with time for other passions. Those 5 pieces, we can actually measure them over time for whatever we call balance. But Mark, how about you?
Well, I think it is a myth. Work-life balance, I think you just have life. And to the degree that you can strive towards the EOS life, I think you can be quite happy. Because what people are really striving for when they talk about work-life balance is happiness.
Right.
That's right.
And I think happiness is pretty much an equation of expectations minus results. It's, are you getting what you expected? And if you have a personal VTO and you're planning and you're setting expectations clearly, and you're getting the results that meet those expectations, you'll be quite
Right.
happy. And the idea of work-life balance goes away.
That's right. All right, everyone. I think we made it through all of the questions.
Yeah.
I just want to thank everyone for absolutely being here. And please read the People book and reach out and give us your thoughts.
And I just want to say one quick thing.
Yes.
So writing this book with you two was such a pure joy. I mean, I really, really loved it. And we all get asked, ooh, 3 co-authors?
That's
Like, how'd
true.
that
It was
work out?
fun. It was really fun.
Yeah.
We
People should
really
try
had
it.
a great time. So I'm glad that we could have this experience together.
We are
was a lot of
all
fun.
very grateful for all of you out there. Let us know what you think of the book.